there is a practice you might have seen on social media.
If we don't open katapelo just for because of today.
All right. Gewija shifada kurusha melebetrika. Givija mulimu yo mogolo kanda belia traka. Spider roller spine memelebet laga. Winner the true preparation. Hi.
Called Salamantation. Now I know you might know Salam, particularly the Islamic version of Salam, which is a salute gesture, right? A salute gesture from Islam. And these are people who I thought, let's talk about the origins of Salamantation. This particular practice where you hear people somewhat speaking in tongues, what you would call tongues, and for a lot of people it's a joke. It sounds like a joke.
Yes, well,
we shouldn't take it as a joke. We should actually take it for the serious practice of which it is, which is a very dangerous spiritual practice that has put a lot of people in danger, and it's engaging in a lot of very dangerous practices. It's the Reality Show with daily Christian commentary videos. Other episodes done today, they'll be down in the pinned comments. Now, let's talk about the origins of this entire thing, because people have their own version of origins and stuff like that. I remember one particular guy. Now, I want to be very clear. When I say Salamantation, I'm not talking about a person who calls himself Salamantation. There is a gentleman on TikTok who calls himself that. But I'm talking about Salamantation as the whole practice of all these guys that Randa, Kanda, Vanda, Wanda, all that entire jazz there. I'm not talking about one individual, because there is a guy who calls himself that. I'm talking about the practice itself as a whole. Where does it come from? Where is the dangers? And what does it do? This particular gentleman here, I want to just kind of like deal with that and then skip over. This particular gentleman states his origins.
Who is Salamantation, or what is Salamantation? The book of Acts, chapter 13, verse 9 says, when Saul was called by Jehovah to work his work, he was later given a spiritual name and was changed from Saul to Paul. Now, each and every spiritual name needs an interpretation. Paul means a person who will deliver Christians, a person who will take Christians and show them the right way and give them the revelation of the Bible verses that are hidden. The book of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 23 says, Jesus Christ was given a name of Emmanuel. Emmanuel needs an interpretation because of it is a spiritual name. It means God is with us. Now, Salamantation, we find it from the book of Isaiah 42, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, we find it from the book of Isaiah 62, verse 2, says, his righteousness, kings will come to his righteousness, and they will see the light. And he will be given a new name, Salamantation. This name was given to me when I was prophesying by Jehovah, and says, you will use this name Salamantation. It will train the people who will know you through this name, because of I'm inside this name. When I asked God, what does Salamantation mean? God said to me, Salamantation means the gift fixer. I'm sending you to fix the gift of prophets, traditionalism, mediums, bishop, pastors, each and every person who is here operating inside the spiritual world. You are here to fix these people.
He takes it Isaiah 62, and he says that, he keeps highlighting the word, the righteousness there, and the kings shall come up and what. But if you actually read the verse, it says, for the sake of Zion, I will not hold my peace. For the sake of Jerusalem, I will not rest. So right there, we get the idea. The verse is talking about Israel. Okay, let's go forward. And then he brings up until, this is where I think it's important, until the righteousness thereof goes forth as bride. When that righteousness that he's pointing at, reading the whole thing would have told you the righteousness in verse number 1 and the righteousness that goes to the Gentiles in verse number 2, that the righteousness will see, that they will see. It wasn't pointing to an individual. It was talking about people seeing the righteousness out of Zion. So he's clearly talking about Israel at a point when they are a people to be pointed to for the worship of God. Right now, they are not. Right now, we can only say, we believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who Jesus came to fulfill that particular covenant and broaden it over to the Gentiles. Right now, Israel is very isolated in its worship of God, and which is not what they were supposed to do. They made righteousness heritage, and they forgot they had a duty to being a witness, which is what the verse is talking about. Is that the righteousness that is seen there is something that becomes seen by others. So now that we have cleared that, okay, so when he talks about the Gentiles coming to 30, he says, thou shalt be called by a new name. So that's where he claims he got the name. Yeah, but he's talking about Israel. The he that is called by a new name is from verse 1, Zion. Very clearly stated there. And even if you go a little bit down, it then shows verse number 4, neither shall thy land anymore be turned desolate. And so that can be speaking about an individual. So where does this entire thing come from? ZCC. Salamantation comes from ZCC. ZCC, if you've looked at the structure, if you've understood the structure, you'll know that ZCC has a branch of guys who wear overalls and they go to pray in the mountains. This is where Salamantation comes from. Most of the guys that are appointed in that, maybe they'll be called by a prophet. You might have heard videos of people who come out of ZCC speak about this, that when they got into ZCC, they were given sprofito. And the sprofito told them to go and pay attention to their gifts and also to give their times in their gifts to the church. And some of them get called either to being a prophet under the church, or they get told to go and do the needful for their thing. You've heard people saying that they were told to go and fulfill ancestral callings and what, right? Besides that. But there is a part of people, there are a group of people who are called within this prophetic thingy to be prayer ninjas for the church, for the ZCC church, particularly for the worship of Modimo wa Engenas.
Amen.
And so you will hear them. A lot of guys in Salamantation are very specific about worshiping Engenas. That's why you've heard what's his name? That one who likes calling people flanky. He once made a video. Hans made a post responding. Dr. McKenna. Dr. McKenna is in Salamantation. Like he's in the whole camp of Salamantation. How do you see? You see, but Salamantation, or the guys who come from Salamantation, they take this practice of concoctions tsa coffee, ditaelo, and that mixture, and they extend it. You'll see them now using joko, and they will use creams, they will use fancy foods, they will use sweets, they will use all these things. Sprite, what do you call it? Spaletta. They love spaletta. They will use spaletta, they will use all kinds of things. The things that ZCC does not exactly do that. They don't do that. ZCC just does it, the coffee, joko, whatnot, and that's it. For tracker, they'll have those particular in combination, and then you drink the coffee without anything. ZCC has that. The Salamantation guys, because they are a branch out of ZCC, they will have joko for tracker, and then they will then add these other things, that they will have all those things. It's an appeasing of spirits. This is where the danger of Salamantation is. It's an appeasing of spirits, because a lot of them, even the gentleman that I spoke about there,
bjale ke mema yena side rola modimo wa bommele bo babe danda ruka memele meruction tracker. Alright, ba kitima le bonyo la mama paeda jiji la barika la basaena ka jajile mesia khaina. Alright.
so I want to highlight this again. So we should not see Salamantation as a joke. It's not a joke. We should realize what Salamantation is. It is it's a concoction that seeks to be in between spirit worship without the spirits being specific. This is why a lot of guys in Salamantation get into criminal practice. I want you to hear me very, very well. A lot of guys in Salamantation enter into criminal practices. They get involved in crime and what. As a matter of fact, even if when people try to call them out for it, they even they'll tell you things. A lot of people, even people who come from ZCC, have issues with these guys, and they'll come up and say, "Hey, well now, what. And the guys themselves will tell them, "We don't know what you're talking about." Why? Because people in ZCC who do pure ZCC, just ZCC, they don't understand. This is a cult out of ZCC. So imagine a cult out of a cult. So something is not a true reflection of God's worship, and then it births out something that's not true worship of God by itself. That's what Salamantation is. Salamantation is a form of worship. It seeks to appease spirits. That's why I'm highlighting this part of Salamantation, which gets involved in crime. That's why you will notice there is a lot of ZCC guy in fraud, in crime, hectic things. I'm talking about hijackings, what? A lot. Where do they come from? The offshoot that gives thing its Salamantation. Because some Salamantation takes these people with these gifts, and supposedly some of them have callings of Ubungoma, and then they go there to get help, and then what they come out with is this version of spiritual practice. Now, another reason why I wanted to talk about Salamantation by itself is this here. I've spoken and interviewed an individual who had a direct interaction with a man who used to practice and I say man who used to practice Salamantation, and he is now dead. The prophet who was from ZCC, who was practicing Salamantation and had gotten into all the spirit worships and whatnot. It's a very dangerous practice, and I don't think a lot of people even take it for that. Because it's a direct, you see, ZCC is already a worship of the gods of the heights, right? So there is this branch in the ZCC church, you know, these guys who go to the mountains, to the caves to pray. Some time ago, you'll remember there was even a guy who went viral even on the news and whatnot, who went to the caves and he died in the cave. And he was a ZCC guy and there to fulfill these prayers in the mountains. It's a specific calling in the ZCC church for people who pray under the God of ZCC. And if you listen to the guys, Salamantation, you will notice that they are very specific about worshipping Engenas. A lot of ZCC people will run away from that. They will kind of know we worship God and just under the church, under the bishop. No, we don't know what you're talking about. And I've stated, a lot of people in ZCC are very blind. Very blind. Very, 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 very blind. Doctrine, ZCC has 2 doctrines, Papa. I've said that from the beginning, but they don't want to listen because they think they get it. You don't. ZCC has 2 doctrines. It has a doctrine for the Goem. A Goem, if you've studied occultic practices and all those type of things, you will know that a Goem doctrine, it's a doctrine that is fed to the masses. These particular practices are very popular with people like Albert Pike and whatnot. Albert Pike was one of the biggest writers in Freemasonry and all that entire jazz, and the top 33 levels in Freemasonry. Albert Pike talks about this. He talks about you create an inner corpus doctrine, a doctrine that is spoken of by the inner cult, the people that are in deep. And so the people outside won't see it. But what I've realized is that there are people who, as time goes, they start to see this doctrine. They start to see the 2 interwoven of these doctrines, types of worship. And I'm not talking about hypocrites. No, don't get it twisted. I'm not talking about hypocrites. I'm not talking about people saying, no, even church has hypocrites. Not hypocrites. No, they start to see people who literally practice witchcraft in the church, using the practice of the church. So Salamantation comes from that, because Salamantation takes that secondary doctrine that worships the god of Engenasi. Specifically, it's specific. They go as far as announcing Engenasi as God. So Salamantation comes from that. So, because if you listen to their supposed prayers, you will hear they always say, what.
Perfection city. But I want you have a smiley. Because you're going to about somebody, but I want to give the light of 4. Mautugia Kuto Ufa. Aratawa Mauta rockets, many American the traction for rock and the light of 4. Amen. If you kill a marana, Baba Ufa. Rockets, Mama, in the light of 4.
Gebabia golimo ga mai khubi reduction ka mo ga ra mushumo ro thomile o gana bya leke mema yena side rola mulimo wa bommele bo babe danda ru ka memele meroction tracker.
These are gods of the heights. It's a worship of veneration of spirits, not one. Spirits, mimoya, manyeloi. They laugh. Guys who pray, if you listen to them, you will hear Mangeloi, what. Even the musicians, there are musicians who, as ZCC musicians, you will hear them sing about Mangeloi. They are not talking about thingy. By the way, I think there's even a group called Mangeloi and whatnot. It's a very funny, it's a very funny whole thing. So, Salamantation comes from that. It comes from the offspring. It's an offshoot from the secondary doctrine. And most of the guys in Salamantation are people who are gifted, who were in the ZCC church, and they start to come out from that secondary doctrine. You listen to Ulise. I once made a video about it. People say, no, he's not the authority of the church. But no, you see, the thing is, you are going. You see, I'm an outsider. It's not my duty for me to tell you. You are seeing it. He was a very revered man in the ZCC church, and he's telling you. There was a point you could not wear the hat of ZCC without calling your ancestors and telling them, I'm going to Kikupowa Parantwil. This is the second corpus of the doctrine. It's not the first. It's not. But you know, if a person doesn't want to see, they don't want to see it. So this is why we have to talk about this, and we have to really cut deep into it. Salamantation is dangerous, and the danger of Salamantation is that it's a worship of spirits. It's a pleasing of the spirits. the gods of the heights. You hear it in their supposed joke prayers. And then they mention something that you're like, what? Wait a minute, what are you talking about? I'm saying the prophet who died while doing this entire Salamantation practices, and he had taken some people over to the river, and the guys say that they were there to interact with a being out of their own mouth. And by the way, all those guys are dead. I'm here to make a video about that, because even the guy that I interviewed, he passed on. He died. Because you see, you can't interact with... We're not called to do that, to interacting with the spirits and what. You create problems. He lived, I think, 1.5 years after. And then after that, he just could not get back. Like, he could not get his life back. It completely messed him up. Salamantation is a very dangerous practice. It's a practice of spirits. That's why you'll hear there are people who are there praying normal prayers. They go to their all-night prayers, Saturdays and what. They go to Mporo, they go to Nkedi, and they do all these things. But then you'll hear about these ones who go to pray at the river at 12 at night. And you're like, that's not ZCC. No, that is. It's an offshoot. It's an offshoot of that secondary doctrine out of Salamantation. It's creating a veneration of spirits so they can go to the river and then call. You remember that video? There was a video that went viral. These are prayer guys. These are ZCC prayer guys. They were dressed in their garments, and then they were shooting this video, and you hear them saying, "Yeah, and they start laughing. They were there to do prayers, and they are acknowledging that this is the offshoot. It's an offshoot of that group. It's an offshoot. It's that in the ZCC church, there are these guys who are assigned as prayer, I don't know, they call them what? I forgot the name. I used to have the name. I don't know if Mangeloi, which ones are the Mangelois? I forgot. This has too many of this whole thing. There was one guy, I think he's from Soshanguve. He used to insult people on TikTok. Because people in TikTok, he had the tendency of going to him and telling him he's very selfish. He worships himself, and he's lying to people about the church, and he would always insult them because you don't know what you're talking about. And he was right. They don't know what they're talking about. You see, the guys in Salamantation, a lot of them have seen the doctrine of the church has this double whammy doctrine. There's a doctrine for the average person. Then there's the doctrine for these guys who go as far in there. It's a dangerous practice. It should be seen as such. But unfortunately, a lot of times, we just hear the surface part of it, and it's a joke. They are doing their supposed prayers. Those things are venerations of spirits. It's a very dangerous practice.